Welcome to JavaScript Talks. We're going to learn about this, also known as the JavaScript context. To understand that, let me write one simple code example. There is one object and the object has two properties. One is name, which is a string, JavaScript, and one function called getName. And getName is returning this.name. Alright, now the question is, what will be the return value of getName? From this code example, is it possible to tell the value of this and the return value of getName? No, because in JavaScript, the value of this depends on how the function is called and not where or how it is defined. So let me just call this function object.getName. What is the return value for this? So it is a simple code. You can just say that the value will be JavaScript. But how? Is it because this getName is defined in this object? Absolutely not. This is because we're calling getName in the context of this object. So when we call getName in this way, like object dot the function name, then we by default passing the context as the object. Now let me call this getName function in a different way. Let's say, for example, I'm creating a variable called getName function and I'm assigning object.getName into this function. Now if I call this getName function, what will be the return value for this? Will it be JavaScript? No, because we are not passing any context. So value of this will not be the object. So in this scenario, if we are not passing any context, JavaScript defaults to the default context, which is different for different scenarios. Like if it is Node.js environment, it will be global this object. So there is one global execution context in Node.js that is called global this. And if you're calling this inside a browser, then the value of default this will be the window object. There's one more thing. If you're calling this in strict mode, the value of this will always be undefined. So in this case, this name will be undefined for most of the cases. And if you're running this code in strict mode, then it will throw an error because this will be undefined. Now suppose you want to execute the function getName function using a different context, or you want to pass the context. So how will you do that? For that reason, we have three different functions in JavaScript that is called call, apply, and bind. Using call and apply, you can provide the execution context. Let me show you how it works. You can call getName function with the call keyword. In call function, the first argument is the context. Here we can pass object and then the value will be JavaScript. And similar to call, you can use apply as well. And not only object, you can pass another item as well, another object as well. Let's say you are passing a different object called, and in that object the name is different. Let's say Java, right? So in that case, the output will be Java. So we have full control over your context. That means you can just use a different context. You can send a different context. Now I'm coming to the bind function. So in this way, you will have the control over this object. You can pass your own object as this. But suppose you don't want to always call this function in this way using call and apply. You just want a simple function, and whenever you call that function, you want to automatically point this to some object. So how you can do that? Let's say I'm creating another function called getName with context, and I'm creating a new function. Inside that function, I'm calling our original function. Let's return that. Then you can just call this getName with context, and you don't have to provide any context, and this keyword will always refer to the object. And this is exactly what happens inside the bind function. So instead of creating a new function like this, you can just use getName function dot bind with the object. So the bind function will return a new function with the bound context. That means you no longer have to provide the execution context. This keyword will always point to the object. Let's talk about callbacks. Suppose you want to pass a callback function in another function. So in this case, I'm passing this function inside the setTimeout function. In that case, you're not sure how this function is going to be called, and that means the value of this is unknown in this case. So to ensure that this keyword inside the callback will always point to the same object as the outer function, we can use a bind keyword and bind this. And if you don't want to use the bind keyword, you can also just use a different variable, like I'm writing self equals to this, and I'm writing this self outside of the callback, and inside the callback you can, instead of using this, you can point to self. So you can call self.name and you don't have to use the bind keyword. So all these things are required because we are using in regular function. If we use arrow function like this, then we no longer have to use all this binding and these things, because in arrow function, so arrow function is similar to calling one regular function with this binding. I hope this video answered all your questions about this keyword, but if you still want to know something else, and if you have some questions about this, please let me know in the comment section and I'll be happy to answer those as well. If you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we will meet in the next video.